All right, so we have some things that we learned about the Indianapolis Colts this week, or at least things that I think we learned. I don't know. I mean, if nothing else, I found the things that I'm going to talk about today to be interesting, and there's quite a few of them. But before we talk about those things, I can't help but talk a little bit more about Jim Irsay, just because I spoke about it very briefly, but as the week has gone on, for whatever reason, it's just started to settle in a little bit more for me. It just started to get I don't know. I've started to get a little more sad about it. And I just guess I want to speak a little bit more in a way to, I don't know, pay tribute to him. Understand my connection to Jim Irsay was one of a Colts fan who was not from Indianapolis, who was not from Indiana. So in many ways, the perception I had of him was the caricature that was portrayed of him in the media, both good and bad, in terms of, him as a character, right? Like just the idea of him providing this level of entertainment value, him being a little bit of a wild boy. Of course, we know some of the things he dealt with that were on public display. But one of the things I'm learning now, and I have spent probably at this point since Wednesday, multiple hours just reading about reading stories about Jim Irsay, watching videos about Jim Irsay, and just learning about how great of a human being he was, how generous, how giving, and just how much he meant to the state of Indiana. I mean, how would I know that? Again, I'm from New York, right? So Jim Irsay, and I know religion turns a lot of people off, but stick with me here. His view, or at least the way he practiced generosity, was really one that followed a very biblical principle on charity, which was this idea that you should not expect recognition. You should not flaunt or advertise the fact that you're being generous, but instead, you should just kind of do it. And that is what he did. And do you know how solid of a guy you have to be? Jim Irsay is a guy that grew up with opportunity, socioeconomic status, and I understand for a very large part of his younger years, he was in the locker room. But this is a guy whose world was very, very different from the players that were in the locker room. In some cases, complete polar opposites, like complete opposite sides of town he came from. And for those players to want Jim Irsay to induct them into the Hall of Fame, all the stories that we're hearing, and if you have time tonight, this weekend, if you're bored at any point, just dive into the stories, because the idea of generosity was one that was consistent across the board, and the amount of stories that kind of alluded to the fact that Jim Irsay would say, hey, don't tell anyone about this, keep this in private, is very, very special. And what I'm realizing is when Jim Irsay died on Wednesday, it wasn't just the owner of the Indianapolis Colts that died. It wasn't just an NFL owner that died. A piece of Indiana died on Wednesday when Jim Irsay died, and I didn't quite realize the magnitude of what he meant to that state until kind of all the outpour of support after the fact. And I think what makes it so heartbreaking for me at this point is kind of this dichotomy where you have a soul so gentle, so unique, so creative, so generous and giving, but then on the other end, a soul that was so tortured by his demons. And it's just very, very unfortunate when that story doesn't have a happy ending. And this was just one of those situations where it didn't. But again, Jim Irsay, really a legendary owner. And I just can't overstate, and I know a lot of you guys from Indiana do appreciate him. I cannot overstate how almost it's being from New York. We don't have someone like a Jim Irsay. Like there's no one on Long Island that I can look at and say, well, okay, this is someone who has meant so much, right? This is a rich person on Long Island that has meant so much to this community, that has given so much to this community. And in New York at large, like we don't have that guy. So there's a reason Jim Irsay is receiving the support at large across the NFL. And what Indiana had was someone very, very, very special. Even more special than I initially realized. I mean, I've learned more about Jim Irsay in the past 48 hours than I knew my entire life. And part of me feels bad I didn't know those things already. But yeah, just again, I mean, that's really all I have to say about it. On that front, of course, we're going to continue to cover the Indianapolis Colts. Life does go on, unfortunately. People do pass away, but just would be remiss to not talk about all of the wonderful insight I've gained into just how great of a person Jim Irsay was in these past 48 hours. And I think a lot of eyes have been open to who he was. Indiana lost a real one. Indiana lost a real special figure, a figure that not every community can say that they have. Yeah, and that's that. But on to now the stuff about the team in terms of news. We learned quite a few things this week, all of which from media availability. And media availability, a very, very tricky thing. Sometimes you learn nothing from media availability. Like a lot of these guys are just masters at talking about absolutely nothing. Like guys will ask 9 different questions in the media room, and the person on the podium will just say the same thing 9 different ways. I mean, sometimes you get absolutely nothing out of a 7-minute media availability, and sometimes you get quite a lot out of a media availability. This week, in my opinion, there was just a few media availabilities where we got quite a bit of insight, so I'm pretty excited to talk about it. One, Quenton Nelson said some interesting things about a defensive acquisition that the Indianapolis Colts had, not one that you would expect. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Reggie Wayne spoke about A.D. Mitchell at length. We learned a lot about Adonai Mitchell here, where he was at in his rookie season, what he needs to improve on. Very great insight from Reggie Wayne. We'll listen to him speak on that, and then we'll give our thoughts about it. Tony Sporano Jr. gave us some insight as to Matt Goncalves and how he feels about him at right guard. Of course, this week, we kind of all knew that Matt Goncalves was going to play right guard, or at least that was our best guess. But to get the confirmation is definitely a piece of news. But then, at least for me, to learn a little bit more about how Goncalves is going to fit in that position from the perspective of Tony Sporano, the offensive line coach, I thought very, very insightful. And then finally, the Colts voted against the Tush push along with 22 other teams in the league. We're going to talk about my thoughts on that and more specifically my thoughts on the play. But before we get into that stuff, you know what it is? I got to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Behind the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. We want to get there by the start of next season. So if you keep coming back and enjoying the show, or perhaps your first day's here, today is your first day here. Hey, keep it together, Justin. Don't stutter. If today's your first day here and you're enjoying what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button. Help us get to that goal and never miss another episode again. If not, no pressure. We'll be here doing this for a very, very long time. Audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show, but most importantly, be civil in the comments section. You don't know what the person on the other end of the keyboard is going through today. If you disagree with someone, simply take it as an opportunity to share your side. Both you get smarter together. That's the goal over here. We want to raise the level of discussion about the Indianapolis Colts, bring it one step further. That's what we do over here. But without further ado, done with the housekeeping, let's get back into the regularly scheduled programming. And we want to start off with Quenton Nelson. And he was asked about how he felt about the team being aggressive this offseason, to which one he said he kind of knew what they meant, I think, at least in my opinion, but then was like, what do you mean, right? Like Quenton Nelson was a little PR trained. He didn't want to feed into the fact that they hadn't been aggressive before. We're not going to watch that part, but I just thought it was an interesting note for those of you. He was like, what do you think about the team being aggressive? And he was about to answer, and then he was like, well, what do you mean? Like, Quenton, you know exactly what they meant, but that's neither here nor there. When asked about that, he had an answer that I thought had a little bit of a gem in it. It perked my ears up a little bit. And I don't exactly want to make a mountain out of a molehill with it, but I don't want to make a molehill out of a mountain either. So let me real quick share my screen, and we'll listen to what he had to say. Hold on just a second, audio listeners. I apologize. There it is. Okay, so listen to this.
Normal. What message does that send to you guys?
I mean, I loved it. I think they were great. I think getting Neville was a big pickup too. and adding those guys is going to help us tremendously. So when I saw those signings, I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
So how about that? Because when you think about big acquisitions this offseason, Neville Gallimore is not a name that exactly comes up for all of us, right? I mean, the reason that is so relevant is because Big Q is a guard. Neville Gallimore is a defensive tackle. So when a guy like Quenton Nelson says that he likes a defensive tackle's game, you can't help but listen to that comment, okay? There is not a single person on the field, in theory, that would have a better feel for what a good defensive tackle is than an offensive guard. After all, those are the guys they're constantly competing with. Neville Gallimore, listen, a former third-round pick out of Oklahoma, has not had an illustrious career up to this point, but has had a good pedigree, or rather, that is a good pedigree out of Oklahoma, right? Drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, had an injury in his second year, came back, wasn't quite the same, and then gets beat out by Jonathan Hankins for the job after Dallas brings him in. And then the next season, Dallas goes on to draft Mozzie Smith in the first round. Fast forward, he ends up on the Rams last year. Neville Gallimore, this is, not Mozzie Smith. And he really ends up having maybe his best season yet in the league, including a strong playoff performance against the Vikings, where he had 1.5 sacks, and then another playoff performance against the Eagles where he had 2 sacks and a safety. So it's quite possible that we have a guy, when you take the late season surge from him into account, along with Quenton Nelson, who did not at all have to say anything about Neville Gallimore. He's not even a guy on the offensive line. So in my opinion, that was sheer like game recognizes game type of stuff, not just him supporting one of the guys in his position group. We might have a guy in Neville Gallimore that's just a little bit better than we think he is. At 28 years old, that's kind of the age where players start to hit their prime. So I'm curious to see how he contributes to the Indianapolis Colts, because you look at the depth chart right now, and of course you have Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner starting on this thing, and they drafted Tim Smith out of Alabama in round 6. But after that, you have Adonai and you have Neville Gallimore as the 2 primary backups, and really a huge opportunity for Gallimore to come in and be a pretty significant player on the defensive line for the Indianapolis Colts. Perhaps he is the guy, the defensive tackle, that we wanted Raekwon Davis to be, and really for a fraction of the price. So I'm kind of starting to feel pretty good about that Gallimore signing, at least after what I heard about Quenton Nelson, or what I heard Quenton Nelson say about him. Curious to see how he contributes. Next, Reggie Wayne spoke quite a bit about A.D. Mitchell, had a lot to say about A.D. Mitchell. Let's quickly share the screen, share the audio for the audio listeners, and listen to what Reggie Wayne had to say.
In the offense where you can swap roles like?
Oh yeah, we do, right? I mean, I think that's probably in all offenses, right? Especially when you got, not saying it happens here, but it just happens naturally everywhere. Like when you get a receiver that that's kind of like your guy, and he's not getting enough looks, so you'd be like, all right, shut up, go over there and run that route, and so we can get you the ball and then go back to your normal position. So it's like, you know, I think every team has that flexibility where you can move guys all around, and some guys run routes better than others in certain cases. So yeah, we got that flexibility, and but I do believe that all our guys are pretty solid at running whatever we throw at them.
Have you seen AD come back?
Hey man, listen, AD look good, man. We hadn't had an argument yet, so that's a bonus. Yes, that's a bonus. So, but he's looked good. He's come in. He's slim, right? Looks like he's been working out, which is good. You know, his attention to detail is even better, right? So that's what you want to see, right? You want to see him grow each year. Yeah, man, he looks good.
The fact that he was able
like a step he needed to take, like all young players.
Well, I just think all young players, that's what it is, right? It's one of those things where, you know, it even happened to myself. Like when you feel like you're not involved the way you want to be, you kind of turn to a little baby, right? And I'm an example of that, right? So, but then it's like that next step is like, all right, let me learn my role, right? Let me focus on the things that I can control, right? And move from there. And I mean, he's backing up Alec right now. I mean, can't throw Alec away. Alec just had a great year. So it just coming in, understanding what's going on, understanding your place. But when your number is called, let's make sure that we get a home run, not just a base hit.
The fact that he was able to get open as routinely as he did.
So, what a gem it is to have Reggie Wayne as a guy on the coaching staff, is it not? One of the things I love about having guys like Reggie Wayne and Robert Mathis when he was coaching as well, these are guys that not only were amazing at their position, but they were amazing Indianapolis Colts, right? Being a great Indianapolis Colt meant something to them and means something to them now, and that's just the type of stuff you like to have coaching your young players. But as far as Adonai Mitchell goes, because that's a digression, this was a guy, and for those of you following last offseason, you know this, that was my favorite wide receiver in the draft. When the Colts walked out of that draft with Adonai Mitchell, I could not have, it's so rare that you have a favorite player in the draft and your team ends up with them. You kind of just have to go watch him play somewhere else. But I have the privilege of watching Adonai's journey with the Indianapolis Colts. Not that I thought he was the actual best receiver in the draft last year, but if you told me when all was said and done that he was a top 3 receiver in that draft when those careers had played out, I would not have been surprised at all. And from what we heard from Reggie Wayne right there, only is the second thing. So, for example, at first, they asked him about versatility, right? And then he went on to speak about this idea of when you have a guy who's not getting his targets, tell him to shut up and get in there. And then they coupled it by asking about Adonai Mitchell, and he kind of said he was being a big baby, this, that, the next. And I don't think he was trying to be insulting. I think it's just the reality of being a young player in this league. This is the type of stuff that goes on. Guys get frustrated. But at first, Reggie wasn't asked specifically about Adonai Mitchell and had mentioned that idea. And it wasn't until he was then asked about Adonai Mitchell specifically that you realized, oh, okay, that entire section was about Adonai Mitchell. And Adonai is a very, very passionate player, competitive player, one that isn't used to being in the situation that he's in, which is a 4th-string receiver. Keep in mind, this dude was 21 years of age all of last season, and I expect him to continue to improve. But that was a great piece of insight as to what was going on in Adonai Mitchell's head and what was going on kind of behind the scenes with Adonai Mitchell last season. Just great stuff from Reggie Wayne if you're a fan to hear that type of thing. But one of the big things Reggie did say about where he needs to improve this year, and I agree entirely, is, okay, we saw him get open a lot last year. There wasn't a lack of separation from Adonai Mitchell, but he needs to take advantage of those opportunities when he gets them. Forget getting more opportunities. How about making the most of the ones that you're getting? He had 4 drops for the Indianapolis Colts last year, okay? In 2022 and 2023 combined at Texas on I think well over 100 targets, he had 1 drop in 2 seasons, okay? But his freshman year where he was at Georgia before ultimately transferring to Texas, he had 6 drops there. So 4 drops in his freshman or rookie season for the Colts, and then 6 drops in that freshman year at Georgia. So we've kind of been here before with Adonai Mitchell, and we've seen him come back from it. These are growing pains as a receiver. Not everyone comes in and is Justin Jefferson. Not everyone comes in and is Jamar Chase, et cetera, et cetera. I think he has the guidance in this room. Reggie Wayne, of course, but Michael Pittman Jr., the consummate professional. Josh Downs, a guy wise and mature beyond his years. I think Adonai Mitchell will be just fine, but that was very, very telling stuff from Reggie Wayne, in my opinion. I don't want you to make a character assessment on Adonai Mitchell, but I think it does provide great insight as to what was going on with him last season. Make no mistake, he was drafted in the 2nd round because Alec Pierce had not lived up to expectations. He was drafted to replace Alec Pierce. Easy to forget that now because Alec Pierce just responded in a very, very big way. But how Adonai Mitchell plays this upcoming season is going to play a major role in what the Colts decide to do with Alec Pierce's expiring contract after the season. So we're going to have to see how that shapes out. Next up, Tony Sporano Jr. asked about why he's so confident in Matt Goncalves at right guard. Here is what he had to say. We are screen sharing nonstop today. Hell, what are you going to do? Just look at me for 25, 30 minutes? I mean, you might as well get a little bit of what's actually going on, get a little insight from the real guys. This is Filibuster as I get the screen up. Okay, here we go.
His skill set's better inside as a guard. So that's one is I look at his skill set and the skill set that he has. He's a big man. He's got power. He's got length, and he's really deceptively very light on his feet for his size. He's quick. He can get out in space. You saw some of the stuff he did in the run game in space last year was very good. So that about his skill set excited me. Plus, he's really tough physical player, which for our guards, that is non-negotiable. They got to be that way, and he is that way. But the second thing I would say is, we repped him in there a bunch during practice last year throughout the season. Obviously, everyone's saying he played the one play in the Miami game, but there's a lot that goes into that one play. He was ready, during that stretch to be the next man in full-time at 4 different spots. So he was taking a ton of guard reps on both sides. He was taking tackle reps. So we worked him in there a bunch, and I watched him throughout the year get better and better and better in there and more comfortable. And then I just know the person. I know the worker, and I know exactly how he's going to apply himself to do that. I couldn't have more belief and confidence in that dude than I do. And I feel great about him.
Okay, so the most interesting thing I thought about that right there was the fact that they repped him quite a bit at guard in practice last year. And I suppose I should have figured that, but at the same time, I'm not actually armed with that information until I have it. So I can't present it to you as fact until we have it as fact. But that, by the way, Tony Sporano, all the way through, if you haven't watched that media availability, fantastic. I believe Locked on Colts has it on their channel. I just showed it on Ken Sterling's channel. Obviously, 2 of the big Colts pages, 2 of the great Colts pages. But nonetheless, okay, so he has reps from last year. He comes into this offseason now and is going to have a full offseason repping right guard. I think he's going to pick up exactly where Will Fries left off. I have absolutely no concerns about him at right guard at all. Quite frankly, I don't think you should either. Based on Chris Ballard's track record of drafting offensive linemen and what Tony Sporano had to say about him. Oop, little burp right there. And that's not the only thing he did have to say about him. Now, full disclosure, Matt Goncalves grew up 20 minutes from me on Long Island. So I suppose I'm rooting for him a little bit extra, but I think he's going to be a stud. If you asked me right now going into the season, name one player right now that Colts fans don't care all that much about that is going to be someone they care a whole lot about come this time next year, Matt Goncalves would be the name. And I'm really excited to see what he does in a full-time role. In the limited time we saw him in last year, he did pretty solid. So we're going to have to see how that goes. I think guard a little bit easier than playing tackle in the sense that the athletes aren't quite the same and you have help on both sides of you, right? So when you're a tackle and you have an edge rusher coming at you, particularly if he's on your outside shoulder, you're kind of out there on an island. Like maybe you're lucky enough to have a tight end touch him real quick or a running back kind of sitting there and helping you out. But general rule, you're kind of one-on-one with that guy. When you're playing guard, you have the center to your left and the tackle to your right to at least take up a little bit of space and make it a little bit harder for that guy to blow past you. So I think if he was able to be a successful tackle in college, I think if the Colts think he can do good at guard, if Tony Sporano Jr. thinks he's going to be good at guard, I think we have no reason to not believe that, quite frankly. They really have not failed us all that much at the offensive line position. So that is what it is. Next, the Colts voted against the Tush push, and I quickly want to talk about, and we know now that the Tush push is here to stay, okay? But I want to bring up what the Packers, what their proposal was, because this didn't exactly sound like a Tush push proposal. So hear the words here. Assisting the runner and interlocking interference. No offensive player may, A, push or pull a runner in any direction at any time or lift him to his feet. B, use interlocking interference by grasping a teammate or by using his hands or arms to encircle the body of a teammate in an effort to block an opponent. Or C, push or throw his body against a teammate to aid him in an attempt to obstruct an opponent or to recover a loose ball. Or D, assist the runner except by individually blocking opponents for him. the penalty would be a loss of 10 yards. Not for anything. Based on that, that wouldn't just get rid of the tush push. That would have, if it had gotten passed, gotten rid of all situations where players push a ball carrier. So, for example, the Colts hand it off at the 3-yard line. Jonathan Taylor gets stuck up at the 2-yard line, the 1.5-yard line. And then Quenton Nelson, Matt Goncalves, Tanner Bordellini, and all these guys get behind Jonathan Taylor and push him into the end zone. That would be a 10-yard penalty. That is such a great classic football play. Those are the types of plays that fire me up. Those things can swing momentum throughout the course of a game if you get the team to rally like that and push a guy for a first down or a touchdown, et cetera, et cetera. And I hate that proposal at its core. I hate that proposal. To some degree, I think that's an anti-football proposal. Okay? And that being said, I suppose I'm a bit of a purist in the sense of I hate all the changes. Like when they went to 16 games, or rather the way they went to 17 games instead of 16 games, I hated that as well. I think you have an entire history of the league, and I know once upon a time it was 12 games and like, what was it, 79, 80? I don't know. You tell me the exact year. You have the benefit of Google. I'm just yapping. Point being, we had a 30-plus year history, damn near a 40-year history of record books on a 16-game schedule, and all of a sudden you make it a 17-game schedule, and these records are just going to start getting broken. And it kind of just erases the history of the game. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I like the idea that you can measure guys now against dudes from the 80s and the 90s, the greats of the 80s and 90s, just based off the fact that they played the same amount of games. Then you have things like the touchdown record and the yardage record. For me, I just didn't like that. I suppose to some degree that is just resistance to change. I don't like when they change those types of things. But as far as the tush push goes, not for anything, maybe there's something I don't understand about enforcing these types of rules, but why do we feel the need to get so cute with the fucking words here? What am I missing? We know the play that you want gone. It's the tush push. Just ban the tush push. Like, if you want that play gone, why does it have to be a word salad? Like, why can't you just say this play is not allowed the same way you can't step out of bounds and continue running for yardage? Like, there's no fancy words about that. It's like, no, you're out of bounds. Why does it have to be so? And not for anything. For me, I don't know. The tush push has been legal all these years. It's not until a team executed it that now we want to get rid of it. I know that's like a common talking point. But for me, more so, the bigger takeaway is if you want to get rid of the play, just say you want to get rid of the play. There's no need to turn it into this wording of you can't do this, this, that, and the next thing. Just say you can't do this play. The same way the WWE, when there was the pile driver, they said, we're not doing the pile driver anymore. They just banned the move. They didn't make it like, oh, you can't do this, that, and turn it into a weird thing. I mean, we know what you want to do. You want to get rid of that play. Just say, we're going to ban this play or we're not going to ban this play. Plain and simple. You either can run it or you can't run it. There's no need to turn it into a word salad and make it a 10-yard penalty because teams are going to find the loopholes in that too. But nonetheless, I'm happy the tush push is here to stay. And yeah, I mean, that's just how I feel about it. I don't know what you feel about it, but that right there was an episode. My name is Justin. This right here was the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. And as always, go Colts.